Hello, everyone. Today I want to discuss the topic of pawn and king endgame. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of key squares, so I want to introduce this concept to you. It may save you time in blitz and rapid games rather than calculating the movements of king and see whether you can win or not, or you can draw. This idea will help you identify whether you've got a winning position very quickly, within 5 seconds or so. So if you look at the position in front of you, if it's white's move, can white force a win? And if it's black's turn, can he force a draw? So that's not so easy to tell unless you start calculating where the kings move and what happens to it. If you consider a pawn anywhere on the board, let's say we've got on c3, the key squares for c3 is 5, c5, and d5. These are the key squares for this pawn. So if the white's king can occupy any of these squares, then he can promote the pawn. And if he can't, he won't be able to promote it. So obviously for black pawns, it'll be the opposite way. Let's say if you've got a pawn on f5 or something, then the key squares will become e3, f3, and g3. If the pawn crosses the halfway line and goes into the enemy territory, then you've got 6 key squares, which are these squares. So if the king can get to those squares, then he can promote the pawn. The only exception is the A and H key squares for each side. So if the king can occupy those squares, then he can promote. Now let's consider this scenario here. Can white force a win if it's white's turn? And have a think about it and see what you decide. Now let's think about the concept that we just introduced, the concept of key squares. The key squares, as we said, are a6, b6, and c6. Now, white's job is to try to occupy one of these squares, and black's job would be to prevent white from doing that. Okay, so let's consider the king obviously tries to go towards that, the key squares, and so would the black king. So we go to c2, king moves. We go to b3, and the king comes to d6. Now, there are two paths now. One path is we go directly here and we lose the opposition to black king. However, if we go the other route, now the black king has only one move to prevent black from to prevent white from getting to those squares, and you can see that we now go here and we haven't reached the key square yet, but the black will move to b7 to prevent us from getting here. But now when we move to b5, black has to give way and leave one of these protection of one of these squares. If the black king goes to a7, we occupy c6. If the black king goes to c7, we occupy a6. If the king goes back, then we move forward and control this b6 square and win. So now you see how this idea can be used to help you with winning the situations or some of the positions. Now, let's go back and have a look at the position that we looked at the start of this video and see if we can decide who wins if it's white's turn. So we know the concept of the key squares. Can white occupy these? You can see that white within 3 moves can occupy these. And if it's white's turn, the white's third move will be this one. And on the third move, black would need to move from this square, and you can clearly see that white can win the game. However, if it's black's turn to move, then black would just go and prevent white from getting to those squares, and he will get the opposition here. So there you are. Hopefully this was useful and you have understood this concept. Just try to memorize these key squares. So hopefully this has helped you with understanding this concept and will help you with winning some of the pawn and king endgames.